Desperation.
They chained her with a wolf. By dawn, the Alpha King claimed her. The forest breathed like a living thing.
Brr. Its shadows moved with quiet intent, and the wind whispered secrets of old, long-forgotten magic. Elara walked carefully, her cloak drawn tight around her shoulders, her boots crunching softly against the frost-tipped leaves. Brr.
She was supposed to remain within the safety of her family's lands, to obey the rules of nobles and the court, but the curiosity burning inside her would not be silenced.
Brr.
Elara was known for her sharp mind and brave heart, but even she could not deny the fear that clung to her as she ventured deeper into the forest. Tales of the Kirsten lands were whispered in hushed tones by servants and merchants alike.
Desperation. The villagers spoke of a great wolf, a creature of nightmares and myth, said to guard the heart of the forest. Many who entered never returned. Desperation. Yet tonight the forest seemed quieter than usual. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow that danced on the frost. Elara paused, listening to the stillness, her fingers tightening on the hilt of the dagger she carried. It was not courage that drove her forward, but a mixture of defiance and desperation. She had longed to escape the suffocating rules of her family, to glimpse a world beyond the castle walls. And now she would see it, or perish trying. Brr. A rustle in the undergrowth froze her mid-step. Her breath caught. From the shadows emerged the hunters, a band of men with greedy eyes and rough hands, carrying ropes and nets. They had been tracking her for hours, waiting for the right moment to strike. Desperation. Elara's heart pounded as she backed away, her dagger raised. "Stay back!" she called, her voice trembling more from fear than from resolve. Desperation.
The hunters laughed, a cruel sound that pierced the quiet. "No one escapes the forest, little lady," the tallest one sneered.
"The woods will feed us your ransom. And the wolf, if he even exists, will not save you." Before she could react further, a deep growl rolled through the trees. It was not the growl of a man or beast known to her. It was a sound older than the mountains, a sound that seemed to echo inside her very bones. The hunters froze, fear replacing their greed. Brr. From the darkness, the wolf appeared. His eyes glowed with an unnatural amber light, and his massive frame moved with a terrifying grace. Desperation. Fur as black as midnight rippled over muscles that seemed carved from stone. He was beautiful in a way that frightened and mesmerized Elara at once. The hunters raised their weapons, but the wolf's growl deepened, resonating like thunder. They faltered, then scattered into the trees, leaving Elara trembling but unharmed. The wolf approached her, slow and deliberate, his gaze fixed upon her. He did not attack. Yet he was not entirely tame. His presence was a warning, a challenge, and a question all at once. Bray. Elara's instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs refused. Something in the wolf's eyes, something familiar yet unknowable, held her in place. Then, with a motion both fluid and deliberate, the wolf lowered his head and nudged something toward her. Chains. Heavy, glowing with a soft, eerie light.
Elara stared at them, confused and wary.
Brr. The wolf did not speak, yet somehow she understood. She was to wear them, to accept their binding, or risk the forest's wrath. Hesitation seized her. She did not know if the chains were a test, a trap, or a curse, but she felt the pull of their power deep within her chest. Brr. Her hands shook as she reached for the chains. The moment her fingers brushed the cold metal, a sharp energy surged through her, burning yet not harming her. Brr. The chains wrapped around her wrists, as if alive, forming links that seemed impossibly heavy, yet unnaturally light. She tried to pull away, but they would not budge. Bird. The wolf watched, tilting his head as though assessing her reaction. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second, and Alara glimpsed the faintest trace of humanity behind the feral mask. Her heart ached with confusion. Was this monster truly a creature, or something more? Something trapped between forms, between worlds. The forest seemed to hum with life around them. Bird. The trees whispered, the wind shifted, and the shadows lengthened as if urging them onward. The wolf, now moving beside her, guided her deeper into the forest, past roots that twisted like serpents and streams that shimmered unnaturally under the moonlight. Alara walked in silence, her mind a storm of questions and fear. Why had the wolf saved her? Why had he bound her with these chains? And most importantly, why did she feel a strange comfort in his presence, as if some part of her had always known him? They came upon a clearing where ruins of an ancient temple rose from the earth, blackened by time yet imbued with a strange majesty. Stones carved with runes glowed faintly, illuminating the wolf and Alara in spectral light. This place, Alara whispered, stepping closer. What is it? The wolf only stared, his amber eyes reflecting the rune's glow. Then, almost imperceptibly, he lowered his head, as though inviting her to follow him into the heart of the ruins. Inside the temple, the air was thick with magic. Symbols carved into the stone walls pulsed with power, and the chains around Alara's wrists resonated, warming her with a strange, unfamiliar energy. The wolf circled her once, then sat, watching with unblinking eyes. Alara sank to the ground, her back against a cold stone. Fear and awe warred within her. She wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but the right words refused to form. Instead, she studied the wolf, studied the way his muscles tensed and relaxed, the way his eyes betrayed a longing she could not yet understand. Then came the first sign. A voice, low and rough, seemed to echo from within the wolf. Why do you resist? It asked. Not aloud, yet somehow she heard it in her mind. You are bound by fate as much as by chains.
And yet you linger at the edge of fear, curious as a moth to flame. Alara's a breath caught.
Burst. The voice was human, deep, and weighted with sorrow. She stepped back instinctively, fear rising anew. Who are you? She whispered, clutching the chains. The wolf did not answer with words. Instead, he lowered his head again, closer to hers. Bray. In that moment, she saw the face behind the fur, the sharp jaw, the eyes haunted by centuries, the aura of a king who had lost himself to a curse. He was both terrifying and breathtaking, a creature caught between worlds. Alara realized then that this wolf was not merely an animal. He was a being of power, trapped and longing for something she could not yet name. And somehow, the chains were not just restraining her. They were connecting her to him. Night deepened, and the forest outside the temple seemed to grow restless.
Shadows danced along the walls, and the whispers of the past spoke of destinies intertwined. Alara shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of fate pressing upon her shoulders.
The wolf stepped closer, and though his claws scraped the stone, there was a gentleness in his movement. He circled her once more, then lowered his massive head beside her, close enough that their breaths mingled. The warmth from his body seeped into her, and she felt a strange, unexplainable calm. "You are mine," the voice rumbled again, "not as a threat, but as a declaration." Desperation.
Not as a prisoner, but as the key to what I have lost,
and what I might yet reclaim.
Elara's heart raced. She wanted to run, to resist, yet some part of her ached with longing, as if a missing piece of herself had just been revealed. She did not understand why she felt drawn to this creature, yet she could not deny the pull that bound her. Hours passed in silence. The moon traced its path across the sky, and dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the ruins with pale gold. The wolf remained by her side, still and vigilant, his eyes reflecting the first light of day. Then, from the edge of the ruins, a shadow moved, a figure, tall and silent, watching them with unblinking eyes. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the figure stepped forward. A whisper carried on the wind. By dawn, the wolf will claim what he has chained her, or be lost forever. Elara froze, chains cold against her skin. The wolf growled softly, low and warning, yet his amber eyes flicked toward the figure, sharp with recognition and fear. Whatever fate had drawn them together was no longer confined to the forest. It had been noticed. The first rays of sunlight touched the ruins, and Elara felt the chains pulse with a strange burning energy. The wolf stood beside her, massive and majestic, yet trembling as if he too sensed the coming storm. Elara looked into his eyes and saw a mixture of longing, sorrow, and hope. She did not know what would happen next, but she understood one thing clearly. Her life had changed forever. The forest had bound her to the wolf, and by dawn they would face a destiny neither could escape. And somewhere deep inside where fear and courage collided, Elara felt the first spark of a bond that would shape not only her future, but the fate of kingdoms. The forest had not been silent for long. By the time dawn's first light seeped into the ruins, the shadowy figure that had watched Elara and the wolf vanished into the mist, leaving only a sense of lingering threat. Elara rubbed her wrists, feeling the weight of the chains and the pulse of the strange magic within them. They hummed softly, almost alive, as though aware of her thoughts and her fears. The wolf, Kale, circled her slowly, sniffing the air, his eyes constantly scanning the trees. Though his massive form radiated danger, there was a tension in him now, something like restraint, desperation. He had saved her life, but even now he was not entirely free of the curse that bound him. "Elara," he said, voice low and rough, echoing in her mind. "You must understand. The forest does not forgive. It tests all who enter." Breath. "And you," his gaze pierced hers. "You are more than you appear to be." Elara flinched at the words, startled by their human clarity. She had not expected him to speak again. I am nothing but a noblewoman," she said, trying to sound firm though her voice wavered. "I'm just lost." "You are chosen, and for that you are bound to me." His amber eyes softened, and in that instant, Elara saw not the wolf, but the man he had once been. A king, proud and broken, trapped within a curse older than any memory she could name. She looked away, shivering despite the warmth that radiated from his body. "Brasket."
"Bound to you,"
she whispered. The chains pulsed faintly, a reminder of the magical tether that held them together. "I do not understand. Why me?" Kale's ears twitched, and he lowered his head, his breath warm against her face. "The forest chooses. I do not. And yet, I feel the same pull you do." It is not just chains that bind us. It is fate itself. We must survive it together. Elara swallowed hard. She wanted to ask what he meant, to demand clarity, but words felt small compared to the weight of the moment. Instead, she followed him, her steps cautious but steady. The forest grew thicker as they moved. Trees twisted skyward like blackened fingers, their roots snaking across the path. Mist clung to the ground, curling around her boots. Strange noises echoed through the undergrowth. Whispers of unseen creatures, the rustle of wings, the faint crunch of claws. Each step made her pulse quicken, yet she found herself relying more on Kale than on her own instincts. They reached a river, its waters dark and flowing swiftly, reflecting the pale light of the rising sun. Kale stopped at the edge, his reflection rippling alongside hers. "We cannot cross here," he said. "The water is cursed. It will test our deepest fears." Elara peered into the river, seeing strange shapes moving beneath the surface, shadows of faces, eyes that watched, mouths that whispered secrets she could not understand. She shivered and stepped back. "Then how do we pass?" she asked, voice tight. Kale's gaze softened, and he took a step toward her. "You will have to trust me." Fear is the forest's weapon. It will twist what you know, show you what you wish to hide, and demand that you face it. Only together can we survive. Elara hesitated, then nodded. She did not fully understand why, but she felt a strange, unshakable trust in him. Perhaps it was the way he moved, so confident yet restrained. Perhaps it was the loneliness she sensed behind his amber eyes. Whatever it was, she stepped forward, placing her hand briefly on his fur. The chains hummed, warm and insistent, and Kale's growl softened into a low rumble that seemed almost protective. As they moved together, shadows rose from the river, taking shapes that mirrored their fears. For Elara, the shadows twisted into visions of her family's disapproval, the pressure of expectations, and the terror of losing herself completely. She stumbled, feeling the chains tighten as if urging her to remain steadfast. Kale's massive body moved beside her, a living shield. "Do not turn away," he whispered. "Face them. You are stronger than you believe." Summoning her courage, Elara forced herself to meet the shadows, and slowly they dissolved, leaving only the river's calm reflection. Kale's gaze met hers, a flicker of approval in his golden eyes. "Good," he said. "You have taken the first step." Many would have faltered. She smiled faintly, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her.
"You make it sound easy," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Kale tilted his head, a small movement that held a hint of amusement.
"Easy is not our path, but neither are we alone." That is what matters. The forest began to thin as they continued, and by nightfall they reached a high cliff overlooking a valley. The wind carried the scent of distant kingdoms and unseen dangers. Kale crouched beside her, eyes scanning the horizon. "Elara," he said, voice low, almost vulnerable. "There is something you must know. I am not merely a wolf." "I was once a king, cursed for sins I cannot undo. The chains you wear, they are not meant to imprison you. They are meant to bind us together, to protect us from what lies ahead."
Elara stared at him, the weight of his words pressing upon her. "A king,"
she whispered. "And yet you are this wolf." Kyle's ears flicked back. "Yes. And the curse will not end until the one I am bound to chooses to remain with me, not out of fear, but out of understanding." Out of trust. And perhaps, something more. The words hung in the air, charged with meaning that neither dared speak aloud. Inspiration. Elara felt a strange flutter in her chest, a mix of fear, fascination, and longing. She could not explain it, but she knew that in some strange, impossible way, they were connected not merely by chains, but by destiny itself. Brain. Night fell fully, and they camped among the rocks at the cliff's edge. Cale stayed close, his massive body coiled protectively, yet not oppressive. The forest around them pulsed with quiet magic, and Elara felt it weaving into her bones, into the chains, into the very air she breathed. They spoke little that night. Words felt unnecessary. Every glance, every movement, every flicker of the firelight across Cale's fur carried meaning, inspiration. Elara found herself studying him. The way his muscles tensed with vigilance, the way his ears twitched at the slightest sound, the faint sorrow behind his amber eyes.
She realized she was beginning to care, even when fear urged her to flee.
Break. At the edge of sleep, she whispered, almost to herself, "Who are you, really?" Cale's voice echoed in her mind, soft and distant. "I am the man I was, the wolf I have become, Brett. The king who waits for his redemption. And perhaps,
The one who has been waiting for you." Elara shivered, feeling warmth spread through her chest, though she could not name it.
inspiration. Sleep came slowly, haunted by visions of forests, chains, and golden eyes that seemed to see into her very soul. When dawn came, the valley below was bathed in pale light. Mist rose from the trees like spirits, curling and twisting. Cale stood at the cliff's edge, towering and regal even in his lupine form. His eyes glinted with an almost human intelligence.
Elara, he said, the forest is not done with us.
Bird. Danger approaches, and we must decide, trust each other fully or risk losing everything. Elara tightened her grip on the chains, feeling the pulse of magic beneath her fingers. Inspiration. Her voice firm despite the fear in her heart. Cale's ears flicked back, and he lowered his head in acknowledgement. Good. Breath. Then we move forward together. And whatever comes, we will face it side by side. Inspiration. From the forest below, a faint rustle reached them. A warning. A predator, or perhaps another watcher. The chains pulsed again, warmer this time, as if reacting to the approach of unseen forces. Elara looked at Cale, her heart pounding. Do you think someone is following us? Cale's eyes narrowed. Inspiration. Yes, and they are closer than you realize. But we are ready. Together we are stronger than any who would seek to harm us. Inspiration. The wind shifted, carrying a whisper that made Elara shiver. By dawn, the wolf will claim what he has chained, or be lost forever. Her gaze met Cale's, and she saw in him a reflection of her own fear, her own hope, and something else, something unspoken, something that bound them more tightly than the chains ever could. Inspiration. The journey ahead would be perilous. The forest was alive, full of secrets, and the hunters, or whatever dark force followed them, would not be deterred. Yet for the first time, Elara felt a strange calm. She was not alone. And neither was Cale. Their destinies were entwined, forged by chains, magic, and the strange pull of the heart. Inspiration. And together they would step into the unknown, where every shadow hid a challenge, every whisper promised revelation, and every heartbeat carried the echo of something far greater than themselves. The forest watched them move forward, silent but vigilant. The sun rose higher, but the shadows remained, long and uncertain. And in those shadows, the future waited, dangerous, mysterious, and filled with a promise that neither could yet resist. The mist hung thick over the valley, curling around trees and rocks like living fingers. Elara tightened the chains around her wrists, feeling their pulse against her skin. Inspiration. The chains were no longer just metal. They were a connection, a tether linking her to Kale, the wolf who had saved her and bound her with a fate she could not yet comprehend. Owl moved silently beside her, each step deliberate, his amber eyes scanning the forest for the unseen threat that stalked them. Though he walked as a wolf, his posture and presence carried the unmistakable authority of a king, proud, sharp, and haunted. Inspiration. The curse that held him in this form weighed on him visibly, a tension in his shoulders, a flicker of humanity struggling against the beast. Elara, he said softly, voice echoing in her mind as always. The forest tests those who walk its paths.
You have faced fear, yet greater trials await. Elara glanced at him, the chains tugging lightly as though nudging her attention. I do not know if I am ready, she admitted, the words trembling.
Inspiration. Every step we take, it feels as though the forest itself wants to see me fail. Kale lowered his head, brushing against her shoulder gently. You are stronger than you know. Inspiration. But strength alone is not enough. Courage is born not of absence of fear, but of facing it. His gaze softened, and for a moment the feral sharpness of his eyes faded, replaced by something almost human, something that made Alara's chest ache with a strange longing. Breath. They descended into a narrow valley, the trees growing taller and closer until sunlight barely touched the ground. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, shapes that belonged neither to animals nor men. Breath. Whispers echoed through the branches, voices that called her name and warned her of dangers she could not yet see. Elara, Kale whispered, his voice low and urgent. Do not look away. The forest will show you what you most wish to hide. Inspiration. Visions flared before her eyes, of failure, of betrayal, of a life ruled by fear and expectation. She stumbled, the chains tightening briefly as if urging her to remain steadfast. Kale's presence beside her was steady, grounding, a warmth in the cold air. You are not alone, he said, inspiration. Never forget that. Hours passed as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Inspiration. The forest seemed endless, each bend revealing new threats, twisted roots that moved as if alive, spectral figures that vanished the moment she looked directly at them, and echoes of distant howls that made her heart pound. Yet Kale remained at her side, his vigilance unwavering. Inspiration. By evening they reached a ruined citadel, its blackened stones covered in moss and ivy. The place seemed abandoned, yet it pulsed with an eerie energy. Inspirations. Kale paused at the entrance, sniffing the air. Inspiration. Inside, he said, we will find shelter and answers. But beware. Inspiration. This place is steeped in old magic. Not all who enter leave unchanged. Elara stepped cautiously, her fingers brushing the chains. She felt the pulse of the magic within them, stronger here, almost alive. The citadel's walls were carved with ancient runes, glowing faintly as she passed. She could hear whispers, soft and melodic, calling her name and warning her of the choices she would have to make. Desperate. Inside, the hall stretched wide, shadows curling in the corners. Kale moved ahead, ears alert, muscles coiled like springs ready to strike. Inspiration. Elara followed, her heart pounding with both fear and curiosity. Every step echoed, the sound swallowed by the emptiness of the ancient stones. They reached a central chamber, its ceiling high and vaulted. Light filtered through cracks, casting spectral patterns across the floor. Brr. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, carved from black stone glowing faintly with runes that pulsed in rhythm with the chains around Alara's wrists. Kale approached the pedestal, lowering his head in a gesture both protective and reverent. Inspiration. "This is the heart of the curse," he said. "The chains you wear, they are more than bonds. Brr. They are keys. And the forest, the curse, and we are all tied to what this place holds." Brr. Eller's breath. Caught. Keys. Brr. To what? Kale's eyes softened, flickering with a light she could not name. To redemption. Brr. To freedom. To the choice that will bind us or break us. But it will demand courage and trust. Inspiration.
She stepped closer to the pedestal, feeling the warmth of the chains pulsing stronger, guiding her hands toward the glowing runes.
A wave of energy surged through her. Images flashing in her mind, visions of Kale as a man, regal and sorrowful, his hands reaching for something he could not hold. The wolf, the king, and the chains, they were all one. Inspiration. And she was part of it. Inspiration. The air grew heavy, and Kale's body tensed beside her. "The curse is stirring," he said, his voice low and urgent. Inspiration. Someone or something has found us. We are not alone. Elara turned, and from the shadows of the chamber, figures emerged. Inspiration. Clad in dark robes, their faces hidden, they moved with purpose, weapons drawn. Elara's pulse raced. These were no ordinary hunters. Their presence was steeped in old magic, the kind that could bend minds and twist reality. Kale stepped in front of her, body coiled, fur bristling. "Stay behind me," he warned. "Do not interfere unless I call you." The figures approached, chanting softly. The runes on the pedestal flared, reacting to the dark energy of the intruders. Kale's growl rolled through the chamber, deep and resonant, vibrating through the stone walls. His amber eyes glowed brighter, the wolf and the king inside him struggling for control. Elara felt the chains tighten and a surge of energy course through her. She realized with a start that she could feel Kale's struggle as if it were her own. His pain, his restraint, his desire to protect her. They all flowed through the tether. One of the figures stepped forward, raising a staff that shimmered with dark magic. "Release her," the voice demanded, echoing through the chamber. "The wolf is bound by fate." "She belongs to us." Kale's growl deepened, and he stepped closer to Elara, body coiled and ready to strike. "She belongs to no one but herself," he said, voice fierce and commanding. "And I will not allow harm to come to her." The figure struck, sending a wave of energy toward Kale. He leapt, moving with inhuman speed, catching the blast and redirecting it with a swipe of his massive paw. The chamber shook as magic collided with magic, stones cracking under the force. Elara's heart pounded. She wanted to help, to fight, but Kale's warning stayed her hand. Instead, she focused on the chains, feeling the energy within them surge. The chains pulsed, guiding her, whispering of power she could not yet fully understand. Suddenly, Kale's form flickered, shifting between wolf and man in a blur of motion. His human eyes, golden and fierce, met hers for a moment, and she felt a strange warmth, a bond deeper than fear or duty. In that instant, she knew he trusted her, not just as a companion, but as someone who could understand the weight of his curse. With a final powerful leap, Kale drove the intruders back. They retreated, chanting curses that echoed through the ruins, promising they would return. Kale's body sagged, exhaustion evident, but his gaze never left Ilara. "You see now," he said, voice rough but softening, "why the chains exist. They bind us, yes, but they also protect us. And they are tied to something far greater than either of us." Ilara stepped closer, hand brushing against his fur. I understand more than I thought I could," she admitted. "I feel it. The pull of the chains, of your curse, Barabbas." Kale's eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment, the wolf and the king were at peace. Barash. He lowered his head, close enough that their foreheads nearly touched. "And I feel it too," he whispered. "The forest brought us together for a reason, and whatever comes next, we face it as one." The echoes of the intruders fading into the distance. Yet the forest outside remained alive, watching, waiting. Ilara sensed it. The forest had more trials in store, and their bond would be tested again. Night fell over the citadel, the moon casting silver shadows through the cracks in the stone. Ilara and Kael sat together, side by side, neither speaking but both aware of the unspoken connection that had deepened. The chains around her wrists pulsed softly, a heartbeat in rhythm with Kael's, binding them not just by magic but by trust, and something she could not yet name. "Ilara," Kael said finally, voice quiet, almost hesitant, "there will come a time when you must choose. The curse can claim me fully, or it can be broken. But the choice will demand courage, greater than you have known. Do you trust me to guide you?"
Amber and golden, fierce yet gentle, and nodded. "I trust you," she said, her voice firm despite the fear in her heart.
The forest outside rustled as if acknowledging her words. But deep in the shadows, eyes watched, calculating, patient. The intruders would return. And when they did, the bonds of chains and hearts alike would be tested in ways neither Ilara nor Kael could imagine. The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the forest in pale gold. Mist curled through the trees like spirits reluctant to leave, and the ruins of the citadel lay in shadow, silent but charged with old magic.
Ilara tightened her grip on the chains around her wrists, feeling the pulse of energy that had guided them through the forest, through fear and danger. Today, she would face what the forest had prepared for them, and there would be no turning back.
Kael stood beside her, his massive form both majestic and terrifying. The curse that bound him pulsed visibly beneath his black fur, amber eyes flickering with the light of both man and wolf. Every muscle was tense, coiled as if ready to strike. Yet there was restraint in him now, a control born of the bond between them. "Ilara," he said, voice low and rough but steady. "We have come far. The choice before us is not easy. The curse may claim me fully, or it can be broken, but the decision rests with you."
Courage alone will not be enough. Trust must guide your heart.
She nodded, the chains humming in rhythm with her pulse. "I understand," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." From the shadows of the forest came movement. The intruders who had attacked them before returned, this time with reinforcements. Figures cloaked in dark robes, staffs glowing with malevolent magic, eyes glinting with hunger and ambition. Their arrival stirred the forest into whispers and rustling leaves, as if the land itself recognized the danger. Kael growled, a low, rumbling sound that shook the stones beneath their feet. The wolf and king inside him struggled for dominance, muscles tensing as he prepared to defend her. "Stay close," he warned. Inspiration.
Do not interfere unless I call. Elara felt the chains warm, pulsing as if reacting to the approaching threat.
Inspiration. She realized with sudden clarity that the chains were more than protection. They were a conduit of power, linking her strength to Kale's, allowing their courage to flow between them. The intruders advanced, chanting words in a language older than any kingdom she had known. Energy crackled through the air, the very stones of the citadel trembling. Kale leapt forward, a blur of fur and claw, his voice roaring in human and wolf tones alike. The clash of magic and force echoed through the valley, shaking the trees and rattling the air. Elara's fear surged, but she forced herself to remain steady. She could feel Kale's presence beside her, and through the chains she felt the pulse of his struggle, the balance between beast and man, between wrath and restraint. Slowly, she lifted her hands, allowing the energy in the chains to respond. A warm glow spread from her wrists, filling the space between them with light. The intruders recoiled, their magic meeting resistance they had not anticipated. Kale's growl deepened, and he shifted fluidly between wolf and man, striking with precision and strength, his amber eyes locked on the leaders of the group.
Each strike was controlled, a balance of power and purpose. Elara felt a sudden surge of determination. She stepped forward, letting the chains guide her movements. Energy flowed from her to Kale, reinforcing him, bolstering his strikes.
Together they became more than wolf and woman. They were a single force, linked by destiny and courage. The battle reached its peak in the central chamber of the citadel. Shadows twisted unnaturally and the air pulsed with energy. Kale faced the leader of the intruders, a figure whose power was evident in the way the walls of the chamber bent slightly with his presence.
You will not take her! Kale roared, muscles coiled, human eyes blazing. The leader's staff pulsed with dark magic, a blast aimed directly at Kale.
Elara moved instinctively, letting the chains flare with light. The energy surged between them, deflecting the attack and sending a shockwave that rattled the intruder back. Kale used the moment, lunging forward with a roar that shook the stones, striking the figure with strength that blurred the line between beast and king. The other intruders faltered, hesitation breaking their formation. Elara saw her chance. She stepped fully into the energy of the chains, closing her eyes, and let her courage flow through them. A pulse of light surged outward, surrounding Kale and herself, pushing back the dark magic and forcing the intruders to retreat, their chance broken by the overwhelming power of their bond. Silence fell. The forest seemed to exhale, mist curling away, leaves stilling. Kale's body sagged with exhaustion, shifting back into wolf form briefly before returning to human shape, the king emerging from the cursed beast. His golden eyes met Elara's, filled with relief, pride, and something more intimate, more personal. He glances around in desperate. "You did this," he said softly, voice still rough with effort. "You chose to trust me, to stand with me. That is what saved us."
Elara stepped closer, chains still glowing softly. "We saved each other," she said.
"Not just with magic or power, but by trusting, by standing together. That is what matters." Kale reached for her hands, still encased in the chains, and held them gently. The chains pulsed one final time, then dissolved, their magic spent and their purpose fulfilled. Elara felt a strange sense of loss mixed with freedom, knowing that the bond remained, even without the chains. The king and the woman stood in the ruins, the forest quiet but watchful. The dawn bathed them in gold, the first rays of sun breaking fully through the mist. First, Kale's hand remained on hers, a promise unspoken but understood.
You are free, he said, voice low, almost reverent.
Inspiration. And yet, I am not truly free. The curse lingered for centuries, and I needed you to show me what it meant to be whole again. Inspiration. Elara's chest ached with a mixture of emotion she could not fully name. Fear, relief, longing, and something warmer, deeper.
Then stay whole,
She whispered.
Inspiration. Stay, with me? Not because of chains or curses, but because you choose to. Kale's eyes softened, a golden warmth shining through the amber. I choose you, he said simply. And in that moment, the king and the wolf, the curse and the redemption, were reconciled. They walked from the citadel together, side by side. The forest seemed less threatening now, more like a protector than a predator. Every shadow, every whisper, every rustling leaf was a reminder that they had survived the trials. But it also reminded them that the world beyond the trees was still vast and filled with challenges. As they reached the edge of the forest, the first true light of day touched the valley, sparkling on streams and leaves. Kale stopped and looked back once, amber eyes flickering between man and wolf, before he turned fully to Elara. The world awaits, he said, and together we can face whatever comes. Elara smiled faintly, chains no longer binding her wrists, but a bond far stronger linking her to the man who had once been a wolf.
Together, she echoed.
From the distance, a lone howl carried through the trees, not menacing, but a reminder of the wild, the untamed, and the mysteries still waiting in the shadows. Elara did not flinch. She had faced fear, darkness, and the unknown, and she had emerged stronger alongside the man she had grown to trust, to admire, and perhaps to love. Kale bent his head slightly, brushing his forehead against hers. The warmth, the connection, the shared understanding. They needed no words. The chains that had bound them were gone, but the bond remained, unbreakable and eternal. In the heart of the forest where magic lingered and destinies were forged, a king and a woman stepped into the dawn, not as master and captive, not as beast and prey, but as equals, as partners, as two souls intertwined by fate and courage. And the forest, ever watchful, whispered its approval. The journey was not over, not for the kingdoms beyond, not for the mysteries that lingered in shadow, but for the first time, Elara and Kale faced the future together, unafraid, unbound, and united by a bond that would endure all trials to come.